Welcome back to Resell Radio. My name's Athan, and this is the show where we talk to people in the fashion resale industry, sharing the stories, the journey, and the insights that they've picked up to help you grow your own business. Today, I'm speaking to who I'm going to call it now is probably my favorite guest on the show. We've had many, many amazing people on. Well, I've continued to do that long into the future. But this conversation in particular, I really enjoyed. The episode was meant to be about 15 minutes long, and it dragged on well beyond that. I'm going to make the call now, and I want to do it on camera, on this recording, so that I can play it back in 5-10 years' time. Of all the people that I have met, all the conversations I've had in the few months that we've been doing this, Daniel, the creator of SadSac, is the one who I really think is onto something. And we've met some people doing incredible things already who are going to an even more incredible place in the future. But what Daniel is doing with his brand, not just because of the quality of the products he makes, not just because of the audience that he's managed to amass, not just because of the identity that his brand has already, but speaking to him and his mindset and the way he thinks about art, about business, about life. Daniel is a serious contender as an entrepreneur. I'm not going to say anything more than that. You'll get the rest of it in the episode. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Any moments that resonated with you, any points Daniel or I make that you really liked, leave it in a comment below. We can share it with other people and get other people. So I've obviously looked into SadSac. It's the reason I want to talk to you. I'm interested in it. And, you know, look, I'm 22 years old. I don't know how to build a brand and a business, but I have my opinions and the things that I think work. And adding value to an audience and creating a community that people want to be a part of, I think you do very, very well, which is why I wanted to get you on the podcast and get more people interested in what you're doing. Because I think even if they don't like the style of clothing, there's a lot to learn from the way that you're conducting your business and you're building your brand. How would you describe SadSac to someone who'd never heard of it before?
Well, first off, this will be a kind of first of me explaining it, because I never think about it that deeply. Mm-hmm. And probably this is like essentially the kind of answer, but it's not as calculated, I guess, as most entrepreneurs would go into business. It's just I don't know, it's just, as I would sort of say, it's a coming of age brand. I feel like that's probably the best way I could put it. Like, I don't come from a creative background. My dad's in psychiatric nursing and my mom is in special needs assistant. So kind of come from a mental health background. And I would probably be the first person in my family to sort of pursue art / business. So I sort of do say it's a coming of age brand because, I'm 25. I just turned 25 last month. So I spent like 5 years investing my life into the kind of art world, as David Lynch would say. And I don't know really what I'm doing, but I'm like learning as I go along. And I feel like it's like the best kind of entrance into the art world because, I don't really come from a pretentious art family, or I wasn't in like a center hub like, London, which makes me, it makes me like less cool, quote unquote, in certain ways. But in my opinion, it makes me more creative because I sort of use the resources that I have. And I'm located in rural Ireland, for anyone who can't tell from my accent. So just kind of growing up in the most like obscure place for the art scene with like not a great deal of art experience, I feel like I approach it from like the most abstract way. And I'm not saying that I'm the most creative or abstract person out there. I mean, just in the most humble way possible. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, so I can only approach it from a very open arms, genuine point of view. Mm-hmm. And I think because of that, the rawness and my kind of openness with my audience, they kind of like, I don't know, I guess they sort of like resonates with them. And it's I just try to be as genuine as I can because I'm far from perfect. I'm far from, being as mature or as the best person I can be type thing. So it's a process that I've been documenting every day since I started this. And that's the whole premise of the brand is like the character is myself in cartoon form. And you're sort of watching the character grow alongside the artist. And that's, I guess, the kind of summary of it.
Yeah, I think there's so many that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. Do you ever watch any Gary Vee content?
Not particularly. I see a lot of it in my recommended, but... Yeah,
so he's becoming a lot bigger and bigger. I think more people are coming aware of him. But there's so many things that he says that you've just repeated, having never watched someone who's recognized for being like one of the best entrepreneurs ever. But
All right.
that's the vibe I'm getting, the documentation of your process, and not trying to pretend that you are some super elaborate artist that knows all this stuff that other people don't, but you're just an authentic, real person who enjoys what they're doing and is documenting the process of getting better at it. I think that is what is resonating so well. You know, not trying to do these drawings that are super complex and you know, rendered on complicated equipment that other people couldn't afford. But like, I'm pretty sure this SadSac logo you made on paint, right?
Yeah, the original one. Yeah, it was just on paint. Yeah, literally.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just the authenticity of that, just using the tools that you had to hand. For me, that is what resonated so much. You know, that's what I really like about the brand. I love those Simpson jeans. I'm seriously tempted for Christmas.
I thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Seriously.
But yeah, as you said, bro, it's like it's yeah, it is pretty much how you summarized it. I'm sort of like glad I didn't have to sort of like explain, because sometimes I feel like my brand can be quite confusing for someone who's like used to your kind of generic. I always call it like word on a shirt brands. You know, it's like, which I don't hate on. It's just not me. It's like, you know, like you'll get a brand who like will think of a word like I don't know something kind of edgy, and it's just a word on a shirt brand, and that's sort of like what I avoid, because it's just I read a lot of books, and that's the kind of, I think that's your kind of your generic approach of branding is. I don't know. I feel like it's deeper than that, and that's again the kind of approach that I go for. I must like watch Gary Vee after this now, because I'm really interested. I had no idea that
Seriously,
that was what he was
I
about.
really love his content. There's a lot of stuff that you're naturally doing without realizing it. And again, you know, I'm just 22. I don't know what it takes to build a business, but from what I've learned, it seems like you're doing all the right things. You're not worried about trying to blow up and be as big as possible and make as much money as quickly as you can. We're just doing something that you like in an honest way, and it's resonating with people. So
Yeah, for real, and that's what it should be about. And I'm like, that's what resonated with when I watched your content as well, because it's just, if you kind of want to do something and you're humble with open arms with no entitlement, then only good things can happen eventually, as you said. You know what I mean? And that's what it's all about, and that's what it should be about. So it's kind of just spreading that message, I suppose. It's what the universe is about.
Completely agree, man. So as you said, it's a process, but if you could pick a point at which SadSac started, what would it be, and how has it matured since then?
Literally the night that I made the original paint drawing was the night, essentially. I would say that's where it started, and that's it's a big part of the timeline, and it's progressed tremendously since then. So do you want me to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah.
So essentially, like I would suffer from like kind of anxiety and depression and stuff. And I know, like, fuck me, 2020, that shit gets thrown around a lot. But like, I was diagnosed with autism at 19, you see. So like, and I don't use this as a crutch at all. It's just I wouldn't be the best with communication. So I sort of have to study up in communication and that kind of stuff. And I would get kind of like sort of over, like, I don't know, like essentially I would just sort of have struggles, I suppose, that I try to work on. But back then, anyway, the point I'm trying to make is 5 or 6 years ago, you know, like as a 19-year-old who gets kind of diagnosed, especially with autism, because people think that if you're autistic, you just play Roblox all day in your bedroom type thing. So essentially, like, I didn't really want to look into it, because I was like, nah, fuck that shit. I'm not autistic. That's sus, bro. Like, fuck that. So I kind of rebelled, and you know, when I was 22, like, I was definitely like a lot more immature than you seem. So I just was like, I guess wasn't really looking out for my mental health and stuff. And essentially, like, the night that I drew the paint drawing was like, I was in a really bad routine where I was staying up all night and sleeping in all day and just getting way too deep. I was almost becoming like an incel, if you know what that is. Like, I was just,
what does that mean?
Incel is like an incelib. I'm not sure what the full phrase is, but it's like incelibate, I think. It's basically like, from what my understanding is, like, it's just, it's a particular type of person who's basically like brainwashed themselves into thinking that the outside world is the enemy, and like girls don't like them, and they've convinced themselves that, you know, they've become so cynical that they're so deep in a pit of depression. The way I would describe it is like depression plus. It's like it's so hard to get out of it, where you're like, no, I can't have sex with girls because they don't like me, bro. That's like, I try to talk to them and I say hey and they don't like me, and and it's not, and then, and I literally would have believed this at one point, but as you mature, you know, it's like life's not as black and white as that, you know. It's like, it's that with everything in between. But again, because I was so subjected to my bedroom and I didn't want to go out and meet people, I sort of had that illusion of the world didn't like me, and just pretty much getting into my head too much. So I drew the SadSac head on one of the kind of most stressful nights, I guess, of my life, because I was like so near the edge of like doing something stupid, like, you know, like kind of like suicidal thoughts and all that kind of shit. So I had essentially drawn the SadSac head and woke up the next day, and I was just like looking at it on my computer, and I was like, fuck this. I was like, I'm gonna use this dummy head that I just drew and it's gonna represent something. So essentially, like, the whole foundation of SadSac is something so small and significantly shit that I drew on paint can mean something so like powerful. And it's always been my motivation to not let myself get into that tunnel of like depression again, because it's all very easy for, I think it's the worst thing about depression is like it's easier to sort of like give up to it, you know, because I think with the whole art world, it sort of glamorizes it and you think that depression and all is cool. So it's definitely not fucking cool. You know, if the art resonates with you and you like it, that's okay, but it's far from cool if that's what the world thinks. But yeah, this is not like, I don't like to use all this as like a substance. It's definitely far from it. I mean, this is just my experience, and I know that there's people who have 20 times worse days than me. You know, it's not the point. This is just my story. But that's the whole premise of it, bro. Was I had no experience with graphic design or art at that point, but I just took that image that I had drawn and gone with it. So if I can do that in 5 years, you know, I'm sure I can do a lot better in another 5 years, like, because I'm actually going to be doing a business program and stuff next year to sort of like up the angst, you know. But literally, I guess, started from absolute poop, nothing, like didn't know what I was doing, but kind of big dreamer head and big positivity vibes, I suppose.
Yeah. So what you were saying about you know, playing on the anxiety and depression, first of all, I don't think that's the case at all. And I think the reality is, like, as you said it made me realize, of our audience, I guarantee probably at least half of them, if not more, are currently suffering, have suffered, or will suffer from anxiety and depression. And especially when you're trying to do something like build your own brand and build your own business, be it a simple Depop seller or some super successful international brands, you know, it can be quite isolating. Is SadSac right now, is that an independent thing? Is it just you?
It's an independent thing, yeah. So it's just me, but I do work with people on the internet. So I do work. I collaborate with a lot of people. I suppose that's the best way. But it is independent. It's all me. Yeah,
exactly. So, you know, entrepreneurism can be quite isolating, and even if it is just you know, not that you're playing on it, but something that is real for you, that your anxiety and depression had an impact on what it felt like at the time, and that led to what you're doing. I think it's important for people to talk about it. You know, it's not about playing. It's about accepting that the reason everyone's on about it in 2020 is I think a lot of us are dealing with it, and we're finally comfortable saying it on camera and sharing it with people, you know.
Yeah, for real. And that's the level it should only get to. Like, it should only be like two men like us talking about it at a very civil general topic. It shouldn't be anything deeper that I have to make a big title like the reason I survived, you know. Fuck that shit. Because that, you know, like, that's where I would draw the line. And I this is my first time mentioning like my diagnosis on camera or whatever, just because it was unnecessary. It was unnecessary to bring it up, and that's the way it should be. Is I would rather like an audience member of mine watch the interview naturally and learn, like, fuck, he's on the spectrum as well. That's really cool. You know, the fact that I didn't have to clickbait to get people to watch, you know, that kind of way. And that's again, that's the whole, as I always try to approach it as authentic as I can. And I don't judge on clickbaiting, by the way. It's just if you're a YouTuber and all, that's your job, is to clickbait. But I'm just saying, as my kind of approach to all this, I just would rather do it this way, you know, kind of way.
Yeah.
So I never take my opinions. Like, I don't have the right answers. I just do what makes me happy, you know, kind of way. Yeah. So.
And that's all you can do. That's what I found resonated on Hustle so well. It's not about telling other people what to do. It's just about sharing what works for me and other people. And if this whole interview, someone picks out one thing you said that resonates with them, then they can use that and write off all the rest, you know, and that's all the best you can hope for, really.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah.
So I'm just curious. Obviously, you were in quite a dark place when you started this. You say 5 years ago now?
Yeah, about 5. So I was 19 brushing on 20. Yeah. So
Right.
like 5-6 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it seems like you've moved into a better place now. Has that
Oh, yeah.
influenced how the brand has matured, especially considering it's so reflective of you?
Yeah, it definitely has. Again, kind of relating it to that coming of age kind of brand is like, you know, I was definitely in like the darker place back then because I was, I guess, doing nothing to help it. You know, I was like, I thought I almost had convinced myself, you know, going on to 20 to 21, that I basically had to be borderline depressed to make art, or at least to make good art. Because I listen to like a lot of sad songs, and I love, like, you know, the sad boy wave and all that there. But it was one of those things where I sort of had to separate the art world from the reality of it, you suppose. Again, I was so deep in the pit of it, it was hard to even sort of recognize what was real or what was not real. But again, I think early 20s is particularly confusing anyway for any young person. So to I guess to summarize it, yeah, like I'm in a far better place, but it's just because I read fucking books now. I fucking go for runs, I talk to people, and when people reject me like they reject everyone else, I just don't let my ego get in the way, and that's where I'm at 25, and I'm sure by the time I'm 30 I'll be a lot better. But
Yeah,
that's it. It's just the sort of the simple cliches that everyone preaches. It's like, it's necessary for me, but maybe not for everyone. I'm sure there's people who can drink every day and never get a hangover and be fine at 98, but I can only drink like a couple of times every kind of few weeks and stuff, because fucking my mental health be terrible after I drink these days, you know, kind of way. But it's different for everyone, bro. You know what I mean? It's like, it is what it is.
Completely. And I think that's why you got to be careful telling people what to do, as opposed to just sharing what works for you and letting them decide if it's the right thing, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So as you've matured then, like you mentioned a business program you were going on, I'd assume that, you know, at some point you do have to get kind of clued up on the entrepreneur side of things to understand how to run a business. How have you what kind of things have you done to learn what you should be doing to actually run and grow a business?
Pretty much just generic trial and error, man. I in the art world, I always try to approach it. I usually approach everything the same. And the reason I'm doing the business course is I want to fine tune everything that I've sort of like invented in my head. But it's a good thing, you know, it's not, I don't mean that literally. I mean, because I avoid people like Gary Vee, I suppose, I'm like, that's how I become as creative as I can. I sort of try to avoid what's popular, or, you know, try to look up to as many people as I can, because I try to learn from my own journey, because it makes me more creative, if that makes sense. So I've kind of approached the art world from the same way, where I've just made what I wanted to make and I've pursued what I wanted to pursue. And same for the business ethic, where I just sort of like studied the Depop algorithm, and, you know, I you know, you have your generic, what's the best time to upload and all that shit. But I just sort of did it my own way. I just was obsessed with Depop, and I approached it with all my, you know, I just put my swag onto it. That's pretty much it. And it worked out for me. And I think it was the right way to approach it, with no expectation and just going in there and just going ham in my own way, and just, you know, having 2 seconds. Mom, I'm in an interview. Yeah, I'll be out in like 30 minutes.
I'm definitely not editing that bit out. That's staying in.
That's all right. Keep it like yeah, so just, and then trial and error is pretty much the big one. And I get a lot of Depoppers still message me being like, yo bro, how do you like work out your finances, and how do you stock all this shit? It's different for everyone. Like I feel like there's just no right answer. Like, you have your generic business and you have new age business. And I think, like with most entrepreneurs, like I just read Tommy Hilfiger's memoir there recently, and I think it's like you're meant to always go against the rules of what your kind of predecessors did. Like I think that's the whole point. It's like you're sort of meant to recognize what they did right and just do it completely wrong, so you get it right. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
There's no right answer to it.
Yeah, completely. You said at the beginning that you weren't as calculated as another entrepreneur, but at least in my experience, I found that having a business plan, or, you know, and exactly what you're going to do, is the wrong way to approach it. Because every time I wrote a business plan, about a month later, everything was completely different, because you do all this stuff and you learn all these new things, and you realize what you thought was a good idea a month ago was a completely shit idea. And so probably the best way to do it is just keep trying shit, look at what I can do this week to make things better, and you keep doing that week on week on week. and then you get to a point where you're better than you were 3 months ago, you're better than you were 3 years ago. And if you're good enough, you build a business. And if you're not, then you're not an entrepreneur. I think it's as simple as that, you know?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, man. That's it. And at the same time, pick up a fucking camera, because the thing is, whenever you grow in 3 months, you're going to look back and you're going to be like, oh no, I haven't grown at all. I'm in the same place I was in. But look at 3 months ago photos, man. Your hair's growing. Yeah. Everything's growing, man. Like, you change so much. And that's why it's so important for me to document my process, because I'm so self-critical, and I'm like, you know, I sort of, as much as I preach it, like, I try not to let the influence of other artists get to me. I'm still working on that. But it is still there. It's, you know, everyone is self-branded themselves. So it's like, I'm so thirsty for success as well. So it's hard to sort of like stay in your tunnel vision, but that's what it's about. It's about your own process, your own journey.
Completely.
That
kind of nicely brings us on to the documentary that you made, which first of all was really fucking good. It's a nice, well shot video. I really enjoyed watching it. But what inspired that? Because I've not seen any other Depop seller ever make a documentary. Clearly you were thinking a bit differently there. So why did you decide to make one?
Well, first off the bat, shout out to Dave McIntyre for directing that with me. Dave's a buddy of mine from Derry, very talented videographer and director. He's just he's gone on to do his master's now. So I met him through getting out of my fucking room and reaching out to people, and through a few people rejecting me. Dave was one of the people who were like, oh, I actually love your brand. And we met and we made a beautiful art piece from it. So get out of your bedroom and socialize, everybody. But yeah, so it's cool you said that. That's the way I've always approached Depop. Depop's like my day one. I love them, but I always try to look at it. Like, the reason I got into this lifestyle was because I sort of felt like I didn't fit in and all this kind of shenanigans, you know, your usual shit. But like, Depop was a good kind of resource for me to just be myself. And I liked how they kind of promoted you being your quirky self, if that makes sense, you know, like I guess appreciating everyone for themselves. And that's what I like about Depop. So I always try to approach it from like the first chance they gave me of, like, you know, put me on the explore page or whatever. I always was really motivated, I guess, to sort of like look at the platform and be like, okay, well, how can I kind of make a next level or like, you know, approach it differently.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had done the sustainability stuff and all that. 2 seconds. And I just had a lot of footage and a lot of photos, because I take a lot of footage and photos and, you know, stuff. And I had seen like a video, like I think Vice do a lot of those videos where they sort of like basically show off like Imran Potato or like Ass Pizza. You know, I don't know if you've seen those before.
I looked into them because you mentioned the documentary, so I had a little look.
Yeah, like pretty much like Vice will sort of like showcase the kind of art kids in New York, and they always make them look so cool. Where, you know, they'll sleep into like 11 in the morning, or they'll sleep into like 4 in the afternoon, and all they do is like wake up and make art and make a living. And I loved how, like, you know, I'm sure that's obviously that's very you know, that's fragmented or whatever, but I was so obsessed with it, and as cool as it is, I was like, I would love to do my own approach of it. And it was sort of like that Tyler, the Creator lyric came into my head, where it's like, Rolling Stones never gave me a cover, so I shot my own one, or something. So it was the same kind of premise, where I was like, oh, well, fuck, Vice and none of these magazines give a shit about me. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to do my own style of it then. I'm going to do like an introduction / you know, this is what I've done up till now type thing. And just sort of like, you know, my whole approach is, you know, I love New York art, and I love the craziness of it. I love face tattoos. I love pink hair. I love like SoundCloud rap. That's where I grew up from. That's all my inspirations. But that's not me, like, aesthetically. Like, I'm a fucking nerd, and I, you know, and I'm not cool, quote unquote, or whatever you call it. So I was like, you know, I'm gonna approach it from my own way. Like, I'm the dorky kid in Ireland who's like trying to make this shit work from my bedroom. So I was like, I'm gonna do my own spin on it. And then hopefully the internet like likes it, you know, that kind of way. And I was like, it's the same thing as you said at the start, where as long as someone resonates with it, then it's, you know, then there was an achievement unlocked. So that's the reason I wanted to sort of make it. And I'm pretty happy with the outcome, to be honest. We're making part 2 right now, which is fucking insane. because I can't even look at the first one anymore because I'm sort of self-critical on my old work. But yeah, this one is really cool. It's called 20 something.
Nice. I will make sure that we get it up when it goes out. Make sure you let me know when it's released. When's it coming out?
April 2nd, 2021.
Cool. Nice one. I remember. What I liked about it was I thought that because you've gone for this authentic, very you didn't go to some fancy location to shoot it, but it's just in your house and it was real. It's the kind of thing where in 5 years' time, when SadSac is a much more recognized and known brand, because it's so real, people are going to be super interested in it. And it's personally for you, looking back on that in 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, when you made this documentary and you were 25 and, you know, now you're 55, it's just, fuck if SadSac becomes some super successful brand. Just for you personally, that's going to be a sick video to have created and then watch back one day, you know?
Oh yeah, of course, man. Like I'm obsessed with like coming of age movies and stuff. So like I get like such a high from like looking at old photos. I always say this, like when I'm feeling like really uninspired, like to make something, I always look at old photos of my man and my dad, and sort of like how they dressed when I was younger. And it's like, I always say that though, like, trust me on that. Like, I feel like it's hard to emulate that high of like seeing your dad at your age in like a rugby shirt from the 90s. Like, it's just so sick. And it's just, I don't know, like, it's like, cause sometimes I forget my dad was my age, you know, that kind of way.
Yeah.
So you see it sounds like such a common thing to say, but I'm obsessed with archives and I love all that coming of age stuff. And I've always been obsessed with it. Like my dad has always had kind of the camera in the faces of everyone. So I'm sort of glad that I can pay my respects and I'm the dickhead with the camera now. So
yeah. I think recording and documenting things is super important. That's one of the things. Yeah. I mean, it's fucking cringy looking back at videos you made 3 months ago. Because I hate watching my shit back, man. They just irates the chemicals in my brain. It's just not for me. But yeah, looking back in 5 years is going to be a good thing. So I agree. Documenting, even if you're Depop and you're not interested in doing a documentary and that kind of separate brand outside, just documenting what you're doing is a nice thing to have, man. Nice thing to look on.
As you said, for sure, yeah.
Came from.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's like there's nothing more valuable than like I only shoot on film, which makes me sound like a Tumblr head. But in reality, it's like, I try to avoid taking photos on my iPhone because I'm such a perfectionist that I'll delete all of the ones that you should be keeping. So I only want the ones where I look good, I have a good jawline on it, I look sexy and all this shit. But it's always the ones where you think you look shit at the time is whenever you look back and you're like, fuck, that was a really good moment that I'm glad I have. And I know that you can still burn the physical photos, but who the fuck gonna burn a physical photo? Like no one's gonna do that. You know, so for me, it's very important. I mean, I have like thousands of like albums of my own life up till now. And that, man, it's so essential. Like, get on it. It's like so important.
I love that.
Yeah, it's for my, see, I'm obsessed with the whole like I want my kids to look back at this and realize how fucking confused I was at their age, you know? So, so yeah.
Nice one. Love that, man. So why do you think SadSac is working? I guess is the best way to phrase the question. From your perspective, I've got my own opinions, but why do you think it's resonating with so many people?
Well, it's hard. I suppose because whenever I look at artists like Young Lean and Lil Peep, Bones, you know, like whenever I first seen those artists, I just got a feeling in my stomach of like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's like they made me feel like this kind of inspired feeling of like being a kid and opening like the PlayStation 2 for the first time on Christmas or just something like, and I just basically wanted to like put my mark on the world in hopes that an audience that I could perhaps create could get some kind of feeling from what I do. And I've always been obsessed with like clothes and style, and you know, like I found Lil Peep because my mate linked me, and whenever he was like 1.2k views on like SoundCloud, and same for like Puya and all those boys. Like I was such a SoundCloud head, like pretty much like thrifting on SoundCloud, looking for all the come ups, and I was so good at it where I was literally everyone I was following and inevitably became famous, and that was the spark. Was was I was like, fuck, well, if I keep doing my own shit, then something will happen. And it's sort of hard to say. I don't know why my audience or whatever might like me, but I'm just sort of trying to do it from the heroes that I looked up to, and do it in my own kind of fashion, you know. So I don't know. I can't speak for them, I suppose, but if I can have the mark, as I said, that's I guess maybe that's probably the sole purpose that they might stick around.
Yeah, I think it's an important role that people like that play for entrepreneurs, anyone that wants to be successful in anything. Like for me, it's people like Jaden Smith, Gary Vee, that I've already mentioned as well. Not that I want to do their thing, but just the way they do their thing so well makes me want to work out what my thing is so I can do it just as well as they do it, you know?
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah. And it's like exciting as well. Like it's an exciting venture and it should be exciting, you know, kind of way. And I hope if people get something from this, it doesn't mean that you have to go on T-pop and sell clothes, and it doesn't mean if you're on Depop watching this that you have to make a documentary. That's not the point we're trying to make. The point is that you should be approaching it from your resources, from your heritage, from the family and the upbringing that you came from. It's like that's how you are. Like that, you're not going to get any more original from your own experiences, you know, that kind of way. So
completely,
I feel like that's probably the best advice I could probably give, unrelated. I try to approach it from that. Yeah.
100%. I couldn't agree more with what you just said. Definitely. Getting into the details a bit then, could you talk through the process you actually go through to create some of your stuff?
Yeah, sure. To create it, I guess anything that kind of overcomes me from like, I thrift a lot. So kind of, I guess, old designs. I'm obsessed with like 80s Disney and like 90s Disney embroidered sweatshirts particularly. Am I okay? Am I lagging now?
No, all good.
Oh no, I'm good. All right.
Yeah.
So I get inspired by like vintage, and I feel like vintage is a big part of my life. So just old graphic t-shirts, like single stitch tees. I'm obsessed with like the graphics and like photography from the 90s of how celebrities wore it. And I was obsessed with like artists like Kurt Cobain wearing t-shirts that wouldn't have been expected from to wear. Like whenever he wore the Daniel Johnston t-shirt, I just sort of love that statement of and it's not like, it's like, I know statement's kind of corny, but I was obsessed with the idea that it's unpredictable. It's like, oh, I didn't expect him to wear that brand or something. So I would love if, like, you know, if I seen like Adam Sandler wearing a SadSac t-shirt, like that would make my year, because it's just so random. It's just hilarious. It's so cool to me. That would be so cool. So I get inspired by a lot of that kind of randomness. Like anything, I suppose, that whenever you're like in your, like, like my friends and I, when we were in secondary school, which is like, I think sixth form or second, you know, for you guys, it's like we would just sort of sit in our corner and laugh about the most bizarre shit. Like, oh, imagine if this, and what if this, and all this hilarious, you know what I mean? Just like teenager bullshit. And again, that's still the sort of inspiration I get from today, is having fun and just not, you know, actually executing the ideas this time, you know, kind of way, just what's funny to me and what's cool. And it's, my ideas just come literally in the spur of the moment from anything that I think's funny. Usually if it's funny, I think I try to approach it very lighthearted a lot of the time. You know, that's the kind of paradox of like, or that's the paradox, that's the parallel of the SadSac universe. It's like, you know, it's like this kind of really anxious cartoon, but it's like a very lovable cartoon at the same time. Like he doesn't come across quite like tormented. It's just he's very just innocent looking, but it's like, that's the whole beauty of the universe, is it's kind of realistic, you know? So like, anyway, that's my creative approach. I really don't overthink it too much. It's just me in my hometown here in Ireland, in Donegal, and being surrounded by nothing but trees and sheep. It's like, you know, that's it, man. Like that's the creative process. But I can elaborate on the actual production process if you'd like. So creative process is clearly very messy. And that's the way it should be. But my actual process then for the drawing is like, whatever the idea is, you know, in my notes, I'll either collaborate with like artists. So I collaborate with an artist called Andrew Schultz,
Mhm.
who does like kind of old school Mickey Mouse aesthetically cartoons from like the 20s, 30s, 40s. And he's like a family dude. So
Okay.
it's cool to collaborate with like an older dude who's like kind of, you know, he's very skilled in all that aesthetic. So he would do a lot of the kind of OG sketches. Like I'll pitch the idea in the rough sketch, and then Andrew will come back with like the kind of illustration and send me the scan, and then I'll go on Photoshop and then kind of, you know, digitalize it accordingly, and, you know, CC and all that stuff, and then I'll submit it for production and get samples in, and then I kind of move from there. Then, you know, just I'll have like samples in for months and just sort of do my photo shoots and all that shenanigans. Like,
yeah.
But there's nothing really specific. It's hard to elaborate on it, to be honest, man, because I'm still working it out. I sort of have my own weird way of doing things. And that's, I guess, pretty much the process for like the SadSac stuff. But
yeah. So the actual production, do you sew everything yourself, or are you getting someone else to do that? I guess the thing I'm trying to get at is, it's clear that, you know, you are just working it out and you're just making it happen. And it sounds like, you know, someone could want to start their own brand and think that I need a designer, I need some manufacturer in Hong Kong that's going to produce things in bulk. And actually, it sounds like you work with an artist, you draw up a sketch, he renders it in a bit more detail, and then, I don't know, you send it off to a tailor and get it sewed up.
Yeah, so like whenever I started, in regards to the rework, it was just, you know, like I would have like sewn, like absolutely failed miserably, but like, you know, sewn myself here and there. But, you know, that was just to get samples out to like showcase and sort of like, you know, kind of obnoxiously approach the internet, just to be like, you know, look at what I made type thing. But no, since then it's like it's actually like production. So like now I work with a tailor in my hometown, and he pretty much just, because he's like, he knows what he's doing, and quality is like, you know, it's essential in a business. So I would work with him, and he would do all the pre-orders and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, obviously I think if you're a Depopper, you know yourself, like one bad review is definitely, you know, that's not a good thing. You always want to sort of keep up a standard. So like quality and all is essential. So yeah, I work with a tailor. In regards to getting production companies, it's like as simple as a Google search away. You know, I tried a lot of online production companies, and there was a lot of shit ones. And the one I work with at the minute is really good, but it's going to be like trial and error. And I think if you're not motivated to have trial and error, then you shouldn't be getting into this scene. Because you can make a million videos that can tell you literally what to do. But if you're not spending your birthday money on a camera, and you're not asking for a HD PVR for Christmas to fucking get your Call of Duty clips, you know, maybe it's not the scene you should be going for. Because I always, every Christmas, you know, like my first kind of job, I was like, I wanted to be a trick shotter for like FaZe. So like for Christmas and stuff, I would have always got like, how do I record my clips, and you know, all this kind of stuff. So I was always asking for like something to utilize, something to make, if you get me.
Yeah, exactly. So it came naturally to you, and now it's matured to this. But
yeah,
it was in you.
But yeah, exactly. But anything, especially with the internet, bro, like everything and anything's obtainable in regards to like business. Because I pretty much thrifted the internet to find Andrew. I literally typed in hashtag doodle on Instagram, and I scrolled every single day. It was pretty much like how I find grails on eBay, just newly listed, and I kept searching, and pretty much I thrifted Instagram to find the artists that I work with, because I knew what I wanted, and I'm so used to going to charity shops and knowing what's shit and knowing what's good and all this kind of stuff. So you know, like sort of had that in me, and it's the same. That's what I'm saying. I needed an artist, and I did whatever it took to sort of find it, and
yeah, you just made it happen and worked it out. I always kind of think of entrepreneurism as a bit of a game. Like, you have to work out what you want to do. You've got a rough idea, but you kind of need to work out what you want to do, and at the same time work out what actually works and can happen. And if you can find a way of making those two things work together, then you might have a business that actually means something. But there's no amount of planning or videos or research that's going to make that happen. you just keep trying shit, keep learning shit, and eventually you find a way to make a thing that actually works and resonates with people. And maybe you don't, maybe you do, but what's fun is waking up every day and trying to work it out. Like you just fucking get a piece of paper and you write shit down, and maybe it'll work and maybe it won't, but every now and then one of them does. You get new ideas, and you know, you get to a point where I'm interviewing you because I thought, fuck it, let's start a podcast. Like, why not?
Yeah,
maybe I'll do
for sure.
50 episodes and sack it off. Maybe it will be the thing that blows up, you know? You just, that's the game.
Exactly. But regardless, you're going to learn from it, and you know, it's all part of the process. Like, so you're on the right journey, man.
Yeah, nice. All right. So SadSac, what is it to you in 5 years? Where do you want it to get to?
I would like to be like an official brand. I would love to have like a store, and I would love to be like known, but I would like to be like a respectable brand in the industry where they're like, fuck yeah, actually I've heard of that guy. That's the dude who does this. You know, if I can make my work and sort of like, you know, have all of the people I look up to, like Sean Witherspoon, at least recognize and know like, oh, that's that crazy guy from Ireland. You know, then I will be happy. But if I have a store, I have an actual distribution of like my product, so I can like tour and do like pop-ups, and I have like, you know, people who come up to me and be like, man, I love what you did in this, like the way you approached it, or you're such an advocate for fucking autism or some shit. If I can like have all those, I guess, achievements, then I'll be happy out, because I can just sort of keep working and traveling and chatting to people. That would be where I would like to be. Pretty much, I guess, what I'm doing now, but on a broader scale, on a more official businessy scale. That would be very cool if I could get that.
I told you he's good. I told you he's good at the beginning of this episode. I'm a big fan of listening to people like Kevin Hart, Will Smith, Grant Cardone, Gary Vee. I like listening to their podcasts and their interviews because I always try to pick up some insight from them that I can apply to my own life and the things that I'm doing. And at 25, Daniel is saying some of the things that they say almost word for word, having never listened to their content. There's something about his mindset and his approach to things that, one, resonates with me, and two, is resonating with his audience. Lots of people know about the SadSac brand. Lots more people still are going to know about it over the next few years. Use the links in the description. Check him out on the socials, on the Depop. Maybe you're interested in the style of clothes. Maybe you're interested in following the journey of an entrepreneur. Either way, give him a check out and leave a comment telling us what you thought of this. Did you enjoy it? Were there any moments that resonated? Are there more types of content you want to see in the future? I respond to every single comment. I read every single comment, and we make changes in our business and what we're doing for you from every single comment. So please get involved, start a conversation below. We'll be a part of it. Hustlers, it's been an absolute pleasure.